Diane, and I'm your service leader this morning. I've been a member of this church for 25 years this March, and I love this place. The Unitarian Universalist Fellowship of the Emerald Coast is a religious community united by UU principles and committed to service, spiritual growth, and caring fellowship. If you are a visitor today, you'll find more information about Unitarian Universalism on the back of your order of service, back here. We have no required creed for membership, but we do share common principles and values. We believe that each of us is on a spiritual journey, and we share with one another our quest for a more meaningful life. You are invited to join us on the journey. Do we have any other announcements? There are some announcements on the final page of your trifold. Anyone else have announcements this morning? Okay. So we have a treat. Joshua Moore is going to play for us. Christine. Christine's going to do our chalice lighting this morning. Our chalice lighting this morning is called Shared Light, Shared Future. We are all flames. When we gather hand in hand, our church, our community, our home, we inspire, we celebrate, we come together, sharing our light of hope for our shared future. And I forgot to tell you the opening words. The opening words have to do with our perspective today. Every block of stone has a statue inside it, and it is the task of the sculptor to discover it. That's by Michelangelo, who's a famous sculptor. Now, if you are willing and able to stand for hymn 360, we will sing Here We Have Gathered. time for all ages. Yes, it is.
Okay, great. Hello. It's been a while since I've stood up in front of you all, so I'll introduce myself again. I'm Sophia Lopez. I was a DRE over a year ago for a couple years before Sarah, and through COVID. And actually, this was the first book I ever read at a service of A Time for All Ages. I felt like it fit for that service then, and I felt like it fits today a little bit, since we'll be talking about sculpting. There's sort of sculpting trees in this book, and it is called The Night Gardener. William looked out his window to find a commotion on the street. He quickly dressed, ran downstairs, and raced out the door to discover the wise old owl had appeared. I hear it now. I can hear it. The wise old owl had appeared overnight, as if by magic. William spent the whole day staring at it in wonder. And he continued to stare until it became too dark to see. That night he went to sleep with a sense of excitement. The following morning, William was not disappointed. Each day, William discovered a new topiary. Next was a friendly rabbit, followed by a pretty parakeet, and then a playful elephant. With each new sculpture, the crowds grew and grew. Something was happening on Grimlock Lane. Something good. The next day, William dashed out of his home and followed the crowds, only to find the most magnificent masterpiece yet. Now, this dragon reminds me of a dragon I saw dancing around here not too long ago. Festivities continued long after the sun had set. As William was about to head home, he spotted someone unfamiliar. Could it be? The gentleman turned to William. There are so many trees in this park. I could use a little help. It was the night gardener. Under the light of a full moon, they worked deep into the night. I guess they're heavy sleepers, and he snuck out. Not a good thing to do. No. Not safe. It's a book. William awoke to the sound of happy families walking by, and a gift from the night gardener. His own very special, what are those, shears, kind of? Okay. I don't know them that well. My tools. The whole town had come out to admire the night gardener's and William's hard work. Over time, the leaves changed and then fell, until there was no evidence that the night gardener had ever been to Grimlock Lane. But the people of the small town were never the same, and neither was William. All right. Thank you all.
Where we invite you to come forward and share joys, milestones, and concerns. And if you aren't willing to express it, you can pick up a pebble and drop it into the water for an Dr. Larson's wife, Chris Larson, let me know that it was about the seventh principle. So I found some words from Reverend Forrest Gilmore, who's the executive director of the Shalom Community Center in Bloomington, Indiana, or he was at that time when he wrote this. This is our meditation this morning, and we'll just have a few moments after I read it. Our seventh principle may be our Unitarian Universalist way of coming to fully embrace something greater than ourselves. The interdependent web expressed as the spirit of life, the ground of all being, the oneness of all existence, the community-forming power, the process of life, the creative force, even God, can help us develop that social understanding of ourselves that we and our culture so desperately need. It is a source of meaning to which we can dedicate our lives. Thank you. Now we'll have our offering. If you'll sing with me our offering prayer. And note that all cash and undesignated checks will be split with our Share the Plate recipient today, Niceville Sharing and Caring.
the earth is my blue boat home. Sun, my sail, and moon, my rudder, as I ply the starry sea, leaning over the edge in wonder, casting questions into the deep, drifting here with my ship's companions, all we kindred pilgrim souls, making our way by the lights of the heavens in our beautiful blue boat home. I give thanks to the waves upholding me, hail the great winds urging me on, greet the infinite sea before me, sing the sky my sailor's song. I was born upon the fathoms, never harbor or port have I known. The wide universe is the ocean I travel, and the earth is my blue boat home. The wide universe is the ocean I travel, and the earth is my blue boat home.
So many of you, I look out at this community and I see a lot of Dr. Larson's friends from long ago. And I'm so happy and glad that you're here today. It's hard to introduce Dr. Larson, but I'm going to try. Dr. Larson taught sculpture, humanities, philosophy, and ethics in America at Northwest Florida State College for 30 years. I was one of his students. He was an artist in residence at the Barclay, Chicago, Seaside, and Nuremberg, Germany. He's published papers on art, science, technology, humanities, and philosophy, and presented at universities including Notre Dame and Nuremberg's Dürer Prep School. He served on the National Association of Humanities Education, was the president of the Florida League of the Arts, worked on the Bishop's Commission for Social Justice and Catholic Charities Board, the Military Toxics Project, Okaloosa Council for the Homeless, and co-founded the regional YMCA. Beside their 4 children, Robert and his wife Chris fostered and parented 145 abused children. Lots of love there. Larson sculptures are in collections throughout the world and on display at Shoal Sanctuary Nature Preserve, where guests from all over our planet visit. Please welcome Dr. Larson.
Thank you. Thank you for inviting me to the UUFEC. It's good to look out and see so many folks I've known over the years. And Deborah bragged a little bit about being a member for 25 years. So I've been talking to this UU since the 60s, for over 50 years. So don't expect me to quit after 20 minutes. Today, I'm going to take you on a tour of Shoal Sanctuary Nature Preserve and Sculptor Trails, something my wife and I have been working on for the past 30 years. We have 7 miles of sculpture trails and maybe close to 200 sculptures. After 30 years of teaching at Northwest Florida State College, I finally retired, and retirement has been a boon to me. I've discovered ways of living that I had never really dreamed possible. And it started in 1990 when Chris and I bought a dilapidated mess of a farm in Mossy Head, Florida. It had just been clear cut, and it looked as if it was a bomb site. After 15 years of hard work planting trees and cleaning up this environment, we finally opened the Shoal Sanctuary to the public. It's our oasis of sanity in a world that sometimes is more chaos than we can bargain with. When I carve stone, I don't seek blocks of marble. They're not very inspiring to me. What I look for are stones that have been blasted out of the ground, that have unusual shapes, dust from being run over by big croaker trucks, just ugly stones if you look at them. But beneath the surface of all of that, I find tremendous beauty, and I think of myself in a way as a jeweler cutting into a stone and revealing the beauty that's already there under the surface. So I find unusual rocks evocative. I only sculpt when I'm in a state of balance. If I'm angry or depressed or just upset with the world, I don't carve. I want to put good vibes into my sculpture. I don't deny the importance of confrontational art, but I don't do that kind of stuff myself. Usually what I'm looking for is something that has a beauty in it, that helps meet the center, or expresses some minor epiphany I might have had along the way that I can then share with the people who look at my sculptures. I invite people to handle them. I brought a few in this morning, and unlike museums, when you go to a museum, they're going to yell at you if you touch stuff. But I feel that we're tactily deprived in our culture. We get too much information through our eyes and not enough through touch. We're really discouraged from touch. In fact, people are so afraid of harassment suits that they'll start to reach out and then they'll pull back sometimes. And it's gotten to the point where some schools won't even allow you to hug a kindergarten kid who's fallen and who's crying. You have to keep them at a distance. Well, my sculpture, I hope, will fill that gap a little bit and give us something to feel and get some information that way. And we have also been trying to work with assisted migration projects, one of which has to do with planting redwoods. Their habitat out in California is being challenged by desertification and by tremendously destructive forest fires that they never had to withstand before. And they can't migrate as fast as the climate change that we're forcing on the earth. So what we can do is help them to migrate. A squirrel will only move a big seed a couple hundred feet a year. We got to move it 500 miles a year to help them to keep up. So all over the world, redwood pods are being planted, and we're part of that experiment, helping them to adapt to climate change. In 2000, we bought a parcel that included a farmhouse, which was really a dilapidated mess. Had a tree that had fallen through the roof and left there, and it was leaking. We thought of tearing it down, but it had cement block walls, interior and exterior, so it had really solid, as they say, good bones. And we renovated it and turned it into this farmhouse, which now is quite beautiful. Out front of that farmhouse, you can see one of my sculptures. That's hawks and doves cut out of plate steel. In a lot of my sculpture, I try to bring together things like in this case, through images and through the title, to there's a certain amount of magic that's involved in my thinking, and by putting this image in front of us, I hope to help bring about the peaceable kingdom that famous American painter Hicks painted a long time ago. If you get on the porch of the farmhouse, we have this little jogging board, a great place for kids, and it's sturdy enough for adults to bounce up and rock back and forth on. And we have gliders made by the Amish. Actually, you've got about half a dozen of them up there at various spots. We like some of the spirit of the Amish. We don't like when they won't speak to you because you don't think of them. We feel more like the you-yous. If you disagree with somebody, they'll draw a larger circle that includes them all. But other than that, I think the Amish have a lot of good things going for them. So we have been supporting them in our work. Down the end of the porch, there's this medicine wheel made out of stainless steel that I salvaged from the climatic hangar over on England Air Force Base that was damaged after a hurricane. And a lot of my art, I'm trying to follow the words of Isaiah, turning swords into plowshares. I'll get military hardware and turn it into art. In doing that, I'm taking some of our biggest failures, our inability to work out a conflict without hitting somebody, and turn it into something more benign, that is, art. On this particular medicine wheel, you can see symbols that have to do with sustainability, with balance, with peace. The 4 stylized feathers that are hanging down have the word peace in a different Native American language. And on the outside of this bell, it's a bell you hit with your knuckles, call it a knuckle bell. On the outside of it are words from Black Elk. All things in the spirit must live together as one being. And then on the other side, which you can't see from here, it says, "Hear me, 4 quarters of the world, relatives are we." Inside the farmhouse, there are these memory walls, things we picked up around when we cleaned this place, things we broke at home and saved to do something with, a broken dish or something, an old toy railroad car. No telling what you find on that wall. We have guest sign-in walls where people have signed from all over the world. And all you have to do to get to sign that wall is to dedicate your life to peace, liberty, and justice for all. We do that every time we say the pledge, so it should be something we can all agree with. Inside the farmhouse, there are several sculptures. This particular one is made out of a bison head. Chief Panay Katawamoitoi, shown here on the left, helped me with the symbols, and my wife Chris helped with some of the paint and the beadwork, and she She helps. She's helped a lot with this talk, and she helps a lot with my sculpture as well. I have a sculpture called Spirits Rise. There's some similarity to the one you have out in the hallway that is part of the UUFEC. This is made out of pieces of metal that have been cut. Each one is a yin-yang figure, and it fits into like pieces of a puzzle. There's also a sculpture called White Hole, made out of Danby white marble, quarried up in East Hartland, Vermont. This is, to me, it's like a peek at what's the other side of a black hole. Is it breathes our universe out through a white hole and then goes through that process through a millennium. It's just an idea I have about that. Call of the Wild is made again of plate steel. It's been cut out and welded together. If you go outside in the hammock, you see Bob stretched out there taking a nap. And in fact, most of the people you see here, almost all of them, are members of the UUFEC. And others are members of the UUs from other places. And then in a few group photographs, they're not related to our community here directly. But through on the outside, you can see sculptures from this hammock. From this glider. Again, an Amish construction. You can see reaching for the sky, which is made out of railroad spikes from a military railroad. You can also see Balance of Life, made out of granite slabs and pinned so that a little kid couldn't climb up and knock it over. I'm very careful about that. I want people to touch my stuff, but I don't want them to get hurt while they're doing it. You can also see Leonardo's garden. These are a series of spike flowers. 34 of them make up the installation. And each one of these spike flowers has a certain number of spikes that corresponds to one of the numbers in the Fibonacci sequence that I have going from 1 up to 55. And when I use mathematics or I carve a sculpture out of marble and I call it Euclid, there we are. What I'm suggesting is that underneath all the tremendous stress and force that you might see suggested in the bottom part of this sculpture, there's this crystal pushing out. And if you look carefully at the rock, you'll see inside the rock little crystals that are there as well. To me, they're like fractals that are repeated over and over and over again, from the smallest all the way up through the spiral galaxy that our Earth is floating in. And the mathematics suggest to me that in spite of this chaos that we've come to accept in our world, there's still an underlying order and there's meaning to everything. We had some Boy Scouts come up to help with another assisted migration project. And when they came, they brought a bunch of longleaf pines that they had saved. And we planted them in a circle. Kids were really enthused with that and made kind of a lumpy circle, but we eventually got it straight. And I carved out of several slabs of granite things that I made to look like a compass, and I inscribed it with the words liberty, justice, peace, and love. And I used the runic alphabet, which to me is kind of a joke on future archaeologists who might come here and say, what were the Swedes doing in Mossy Head? Yeah. I think of Bob here as an example of what you can do when you're cleaning up a place that's piled high with junk and you have stuff left over. You can bend it, you can shake it, you can braise it into a sculpture. We call this one Bob because the head bobs in the breeze. This one is made out of 1-inch plate steel and smaller plate, down to 1/4 inch, and it's called Timepiece, spelled P-E-A-C-E. It also is styled on the Lakota medicine chief. The medicine chief, in case you didn't know, was someone whose designated job it was to go into a powwow and argue against going to war and killing humans. That was a specific job. We have something like that at the Hague, and there's a peace college that just opened in the United States about 5 years ago. The same purpose. Always try to find a way of resolving a conflict without going to blows, because we know eventually we're going to have to sit down and talk it out anyway. No matter how we get there, we end up at a table resolving our conflicts. And when I make a sculpture like a timepiece, that's what's on my mind. Piece being something that you juggle. Did you get the idea of a juggler in there? Near the timepiece is a project that is worldwide. There are thousands of peace poles that have been put up all over the world. I got together with RE kids here, and we designed the one out front that you have, and we put one up at the Shoal Sanctuary. One of my sculpture students left one of these spools out in my front yard with a note on it that says, I bet you can think of something to do with this. And again, I got some help of some homeschool kids this time, a group called Noah's Ark. And they planted flowers, and they helped some with the design. They sang songs from the Psalms, and we read out of the Green Bible. I don't know if you know there's a Green Bible. You've seen the red ones where the words of Jesus are printed in red. Well, the green has anything to do with sustainability and environmental issues. And we had a little bit of a ceremony there with this sculpture. And we had one out in front of the UU too. Kids were there for the unveiling. And then Takako Cartwright, just an aside, donated the sculpture just by the front door. If you come to the porch swing, I can tell you about one of the epiphanies that were involved in the making of that. It's just a perfect example of how I work. Haiku is another sculpture back up on the show we are now. It's 21 feet long, 8 feet high. It has been a site that has hosted dance performances, Tai Chi classes, a wedding. We Come in Peace is the name of this sculpture. That's a carburetor from a fighter plane that I welded into this UFO-looking guy and put it near a deer feeder. Deer feeder is near a tower. We don't get up in the tower and shoot the deer when they eat the seed. We just let them have a place where they can take a bite and not worry about looking over their shoulder while they're doing it. Let's see, where am I? Oh, we're at the Four Seasons. Piece of stone that's actually taller than me came out of East Danby. That, I think I might have told you that's where they quarried the Lincoln Memorial. And I like to put myself in touch with greatness like that. That's why I was happy to see Michelangelo quoted, although the way he works, he's in another class. And we don't work the same way. Anyway, each side of Four Seasons symbolizes one of the seasons. And it, to me, it also signifies how the Earth has evolved balanced systems where we work hard at some time, like spring, and coast a little bit, take a rest in the winter. If we use nature, I think, as a model for our systems, economic or you name it, we'll come up with something that's sustainable. It will make us all a better and a happier Earth. I Got Rhythm Tree. It was named after percussionist Martin Baker, my wife's brother. He did quite a bit in his short life to encourage people to reach their calling, which UU Minister Michael Dowd, who's, I'm sure a lot of you know him. He was an artist in residence at the Shoal Sanctuary. And to him, the calling is where the earth's needs meet up with your talents. And I think that's an ideal way to find your way in life. See what the world needs, see what talents I have. And I'm not going to hurt anybody by doing it. Let's do it. The Sentinel is my signature piece, and it has taken many forms. This one named after Mahatma Gandhi's phrase for truth and determination, which was kind of like a motto for him. Up on the hill a little bit from there, you can see Odin Tonis chasing after a TX, and yeah. And then you can see T-Rex chasing some of our UU folks across the field, romping with them. There's another sculpture called Peace Pole, also part of that project. There are symbols of peace up and down that sculpture, and it's my answer to Hadrian's column, which was filled with symbols of conquest. So this is kind of like my statement about that. Mandorla Message is a sculpture that some homeschoolers helped to install, and climbed up this. For them it was a big tree, but it was actually a berry bush. Big Bird wandered up onto our Shoal Sanctuary one day, and we built a tower in honor of that bird, and I cut out some silhouettes of his various poses and welded them on there. Some of you kids. Here's a piece of camphor that was turned into a sculpture, and it looks like it's inspiring dance here. The name dancer. Creation Totem has Inuit creation symbols on the back, and the two sides have Cherokee creation symbols on them. When we planted this, those trees were only this tall, and now they're actually over the top of the sculpture. So it's kind of a barometer for our success, as they pass it out and put it in. It's now nestled in the forest shadows. Chris and I became certified wildfire fighters. This is our graduation class. We've had over 30 prescribed burns at the Shoal Sanctuary as we restore the habitat to longleaf pine, which involves a burn cycle. Madonna of the Orbs has a UU chalice at the top. See it? The circle in the flame. We go out to Sanctuary Gazebo. This is one of 3 screened-in gazebos where you can have a picnic, escape the bugs. The breeze can blow through, and this is 22 feet across, so if you have a small group, you can fit inside there. It's been it's hosted reunions of geologists, UU groups, biologists, sing-alongs, vision quests. Inside you can see various sculptures, including this ginkgo leaf. The ginkgo was the first tree to leaf out after the bombing of Hiroshima. So it has become a symbol of rejuvenation and of peace. Then other sculptures. This is another bison head, and you can figure out what went into that one just by reading the title. Outside of the gazebo is the citizens column. It has words of encouragement for good citizenship from Gandhi, from Mother Teresa. You see the one word verb is part of a phrase. It was the motto for Patriots for Peace, something my wife and Nobel laureate Betty Williams formed here in the Panhandle. And the whole word, the whole phrase is peace is a verb. And that means that peace is not like a noun, something you're left over with after the last plate has been thrown. All of you know, anyone who's in a relationship knows it takes constant work. And instead of saying, do you have peace, we ought to be saying, are you peacing? That makes more sense. The same way with religious faith. I think we wouldn't say, do you have faith? You say, are you faithing? It's a process. To me, love is central to that, and finding our balance that way. On the deck of the, well, you've got some, I should remark, the view from there reminds me of the lower Appalachians, and that's where I grew up when I was a kid, camping in the Catskills. We also have a large deck. It's been the source or the site of meetings and dance performances. I've got 3 sculptures, part of a flame trilogy, I call it. Each one of them is on a pin, so it rotates and invites you to imagine images in there as if you were looking at clouds, and to turn it and feel the textures, climb up, and you can get on the railing, peek through, and take a picture of your friends. And you might see some of your friends in these pictures. And many of them grown up now. Down River Road, one of the signs my wife has painted for the trails. We go by another sentinel and pass these little cocoons and a sculpture called a thinker. This is a geode about this big around, and instead of cutting it up and looking at the inside of it, we left it whole so you can just imagine what's in there, just like when you're imagining what's inside a human head. And here we are installing a piece called Percy. It's short for perspicuity. This owl kind of looks over the lower part of that trail, which is right on the Shoal River. Climbing up the hill, we walk past another sculpture called Arabismo. It's a Esperanto word for the uncontrollable desire to rise up. It's made out of recycled military tank parts, and that head bobs in the wind. I like things that move. Here we're looking over a prescribed burn. Down into the Grotto Ravine is a place that has been on the National Geologic Registry since 1926. It has been a sacred gathering place for Native Americans. It's a place where Connie Barlow chose to help in the migration of torreya trees. A torreya is the most threatened tree in the United States, and she gave 40 seeds to us to distribute among a bunch of kids. She showed them where to plant them. The kids named their seed, and I made a little piece of granite, put the name that the kid gave to its seed on one side, and on the other side the kid's name, and we planted them all around the shoal. And here is a group of them. Some of them got merit badges for the Scouts for working on that. Here's one of the rune stones, as I call it. Again, I hope to puzzle some archaeologists. And we're leaving the shoal now. We go back up to what we're trying to restore to what it was like when it was an ancient forest. The squirrel could go all the way from Maine to Texas without touching the ground, just from treetop to treetop. 95% of the longleaf forest has been cut. Only 5% is left. But in that 5% is the most biodiverse ecosystem in the United States, in America, in North America. And the Shoal Sanctuary has been part of restoring that forest. She was looking at a redwood there. It's one of that project. Here's some of the longleaf that we planted. Some 14,000 of those. Like a lot of artists, I made a sculpture in commemoration of the Twin Towers. And here we see it during the prescribed burn. Going down toward the river, we were trying to get to the river, and a lot of times up there the hills are pretty steep and sometimes big drop-offs. And we kept going in circles, and we call that E-I-E-I-O. Went down into the down to the river to a place called the Point. There, the river, when the river floods, it isolates the peninsula into an island, and it's in the process of building a little lake there, which will be called a billabong in Australia. Down in that place, you have a sculpture made of silicaga marble. It looked like a cat and an owl to me, so that's how it got its name. Heading toward the gazelle gazebo, this sculpture looks in that direction. The gazebo gets its name gazelle from an event when I was a little kid. I overheard my parents talking about getting a gazebo, whether they should or not, and I burst into the room all excited and said, if you get one, I promise I'll feed it every day. So we put this up and named it Gazelle Gazebo. And then a sculpture called Allure, made of silicaga marble. We like to use word plays, and it's a pun involved in Boulder. This is made out of black soapstone from Virginia. That particular piece. We got lost in here. I said, where in the world are we? So we decided to name the trail Where on Earth. And we found ourselves, so then we decided, well, how about Here on Earth? So when you're up there, you can get lost, and you can call it what you want. Where on Earth or Here on Earth. But I think it's important to get lost once in a while. The idea being, if you can get lost, very, very, very lost, how much can you go in getting found? Opossimo Place is where we have cooperated with Emerald Coast Wildlife Refuge, and we release rehabilitated critters. There's Bear Cub Creek there, the little wooden bridge over it, and on the other side of that creek is 5 or 10 acres that we have not explored, and we just left a couple of areas completely for the animals. We don't mess with them except to try to restore it to its natural habitat, which will include fires. To summarize, the show sanctuary trails are a place for we can rejuvenate our souls, where we can get inspired for civic opportunities. The trails are accessible by car, by four-wheel vehicles, by hiking or bikes, even wheelchairs. We've hosted UU campouts. Miriam will recognize some of these photos. We've had reunions and weddings and university research projects, loads of school buses. Together with my philosophy and my poetry, my art honors the land, and I think of it in a way like jewelry for the land. In 2007, the UUFEC earned the Green Sanctuary status, and what we did to earn that was to take steps in balancing better with nature, including carpooling, which we encouraged, climate change skits, community cleanups. You saw that picture of a canoe. One of those canoes had Don Hawkins in it with a bicycle. We fished a bicycle out of Turkey Creek. And a truck tire. You wouldn't believe the garbage that people went through in that. Capsized on. You were in that canoe too? Yeah. I remember. And then we had Earth Day here at a skit that was put on, probably written by Shar. She's our poet, our what's the word I'm looking for? Playwright in residence. What do we try to do in all of this is find a balance where we put our hearts into standing by the side of love for our planet and for each other. The seventh principle, respect for the independent web of all existence of which we are a part. For me, my sculpture is, I find these little glimpses of heaven and try to share them with you as a way of seeing into that. Well, thank you very, very much, and I hope to see some of you at the porch swing. We can talk a little bit more about these. Would you come up during the break and handle them and encourage that? There's a book that Chris wrote about me that you could purchase. What do you sell? What are they selling for, Chris? This is the period of shameless commerce right now. And also there's a map of the show, brochures for the show. You can pick one of those up if you want. Yeah.
Do you do your sculpting at the school or out there?
I do some of the granite work, the big granite work out there, but most of the sculpting I do in Shalimar. That's where I made every one of those pieces. Well, thank you very much.
If you're willing and able, we'll sing This Is My Song, number 159. It'll also be displayed up here. Extinguishing the chalice, we'll say, and Robert referenced this in his perspective today. All things in spirit must live